The people of Rhea County are extremely interested in a measure that's going to be discussed, possibly be put on an agenda for a future vote on Tuesday at the county court annex in Dayton. That's Rhea County Court Annex, and is a workshop meeting. And among the things that will be done are what measures, what proposals, which resolutions will the body put on the agenda to discuss and then vote on maybe at a future meeting. One of them is by Bill Holland, and it's a measure that may have some support on the council or on the commission, but by the estimation of one commissioner, Harold Fisher, does not have support because it is overbroad. However, that is not to say that the sentiment against it by some, especially those who are forward-thinking and liberty-minded, that this measure is not of concern even today. And we have on the phone with us Joe Page, who's an entrepreneur, he's a contractor in Spring City, and who brought this proposal to our attention on Friday. So we've been thinking about this Friday and Saturday, and even on the Lord's Day, I thought about what this means and what this adoption of a few lines of type from the Tennessee Code Annotated might mean for Rhea County, which has in it many freedom-loving people who vastly took part in the Trump revolution against national abuse out of Washington, and who are, judging by by the number of people who've read my two posts on this matter, greatly interested in what you have to say, Joe Page. Joe, what is proposed for Rhea County residents?
Well, good morning, David. Thanks for having me on. It's a proposed resolution that covers the use of private property. In other words, any county that doesn't have zoning, the state of Tennessee allowed counties to adopt this resolution, which in its wordage, it covers almost every possible circumstance of behavior on private property. It covers the use, it covers your conduct, it covers anything, not only business, but conduct, private conduct on private property. And like I said, the wording is so scary that if you read it, you wouldn't believe that someone would have to try to do this to have someone clean up the trash in their yard, which was the original purpose of this whole effort.
Right. Bill Holland is proposing it as a nuisance control, an ability, as he explains it to me, for the county to step in if you have, let's say, two squabbling neighbors. One lets the chickens run over to the property of the neighbor, or has a parked car that has the hood up and is under repair, and the car continues not to be repaired, not to be moved off, and so that's a grievance, and the two neighbors can't settle it. So one goes to the county for having an inspector come and eventually cite the recalcitrant neighbor about the car or the chickens or the pile of trash. It's a nuisance. It's a nuisance control.
David, there's a vehicle, there's a mechanism to stop the kind of thing that we want to stop here. Nobody wants a neighbor that piles up trash in their yard, causes a health hazard, but there are vehicles to address that. The courts have been the typical venue for something like this, where a neighbor would have to sue a neighbor, prove a health hazard. But again, this proposed resolution is so broad, it's so all-encompassing, that it can be used as a bludgeon by people that think they're doing good for our county, and in reality, they're really hurting the county. They're hurting the folks that cherish their private property rights.
Well, a measure by Bill Holland, who has a background in economic planning, economic development. He was for 12 years on the business council, the economic development council for Rhea County. The measure is adopted from the Tennessee Code, and it says that these powers, as described in the statute, allow the county to define, prohibit, abate, suppress, prevent, and regulate all acts, practices, conduct, businesses, occupations, callings, trades. It's a long list. Uses of property, and all of the things whatsoever detrimental or liable to be detrimental to. And then here's another list: to the health, morals, comfort, safety, convenience, now that's interesting, or welfare of the inhabitants of the municipality, and exercise general police powers. So it's about general police powers and allowing the county to suppress these activities and parts of human life that it says are inconvenient. So that seems to be very, very loose concept there, Joe Page.
Yes, if there's some conduct that makes my neighbor uncomfortable, yes, this resolution would cover that. And that is the problem with typical government mission creep. Everything starts out as a benevolent measure, but eventually people get a hold of it and then they use it to throttle the freedom and liberty of people that, like I said, that cherish their private property rights, that live in the area that allows them to have a wood stove, to have an auto repair business, to have an Airbnb, those kind of things, and also just to enjoy their property as they see fit.
Well, it seems like, Joe Page, if you have a measure like this on the books, it encourages people to not make treaty or to entreat their neighbor, and not to settle accounts, and not to try to end a disagreement privately. It seems like it's there. It's kind of waving at every member of the public, saying, "Hey, we're here to help. Hey, we've got this measure, and we can bring a quick end to your disagreement with your noisy neighbor, your smoky neighbor, or the neighbor who has some pigs in the backyard. We can bring an end to that now, and here, we're over here." And I think it's important to note also for the listener on the David Tulis Show at Nooga Radio that these types of regulations really say they make slight the presence of courts. We have state courts in Rhea County. And let me ask you this, Joe Page, why are courts there? What is the purpose of courts when people have a dispute?
Well, originally, the courts were designed to settle property rights disputes. Until Marbury versus Madison in the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court was typically only used for private property rights disputes. But like I said, the courts, you have plenty of avenues to address these kind of problems. I have to say, the one example that Commissioner Holland used, a ridiculous example of a neighbor's chickens coming over into my yard and eating my tomatoes. That's his justification for something like this resolution. Well, there's a simple solution for that, is that after the chicken got fattened up on my tomatoes, he would end up in my freezer, and that would solve the problem.
Well, courts are always open, and you have in your county, you have Sessions Court, which is the county minor. It's a minor court. It's called inferior court. Then you have circuit court, where one can file a civil case, and also there's chancery court. Chancery is jurisdiction in Tennessee, which is all about equity, where people settle disputes, and the law that comes into play in those disputes is what was agreed on. What is the agreement? And so in the facts of a particular dispute, there is the law inside of it. And so that these judges are there, as far as I know, they're very good judges. They're elected, and they serve for the purpose of bringing tranquility between two disputing neighbors. And
yes, absolutely. They'll review the evidence. They'll investigate. They'll have both sides of the story, and then they'll make a decision. But it's not going to be an arbitrary decision based on such broad language as is in this resolution. Well,
and what's important to think for the listener to think about is when you have a dispute with someone, what you have to ask yourself is, how badly am I being injured, and how great is the wrong against me? And if you have a big enough wrong against you by a neighbor, then you have what's called a tort and an injury, and then you can claim your rights against that neighbor, either have the judge make him stop, or compensate you, or to change the way he does things in a way that ends the injury. And that's what courts are for. You have to show yourself to be injured. Here, when you have a regulatory solution to nuisances, you don't have to meet that standard. You can have just a bad feeling, and that may be enough to trigger a complaint, triggering a visit by the inspector from Rhea County.
And that's, again, what makes it so dangerous. It's totally arbitrary, and the language in here is so nebulous, so vague, that, again, it can be used to encompass literally any situation, David. I can't think of one that if it would discomfort my neighbor, inconvenience my neighbor, If I wanted to go out and get the paper in my bathrobe, yeah, that might discomfort my neighbor, but I should be able to do that.
Well, you mentioned Airbnb, Joe Page. Joe Page is an entrepreneur who runs a contracting business out of Spring City. He's 60 years old and moved here from the Tampa Bay area, where he tells me in an interview earlier that there's a lot of regulation. Let's say someone in Rhea County has an Airbnb, and let's say that there are some people from Bahrain who are coming with their turbans, right? You have a family visiting who are Arabs. They're Muslims, they're Arabs, and here they come to Rhea County. They're visiting Chattanooga on some business to visit relatives, and then they say, we're going to go up to where the monkey trial was and see what happened there, because we as Muslims don't like the theory of evolution either. And that was a famous case where Christianity sort of won today, but was in the process of losing the culture war, and we're going to go there. And so here, this family from Bahrain is in Rhea County, and the neighbor doesn't like seeing people with turbans on. Or not turbans, but head coverings typical of those living in sand-blown countries, and they file a complaint. So here you have someone using his property in an innocent way, making money, serving a very large public, and there's a complaint filed. That could be that, and under this rule, that could happen. Joe Page.
Well, they're already going after David. They're going after the Airbnb mainly because they want to get their tourist bed tax cut from the participants in Airbnb. But yes, that's a great example. It's happening in cities all across the country where folks are trying to rent or use their private property, and the government is coming in and telling them that they can't do it for a variation of reasons. I don't see as far as Airbnb goes. I mean, if the folks from Bahrain are causing a disturbance, a loud noise, it would be the same as if the owner of the home was there causing a loud noise, and you really couldn't address that without, like I said, without treating them the same.
Well, what do you think is likely to happen at the meeting on Tuesday? It's at 6 o'clock. Joe Page, it's at the county court annex, the former Regents building in Dayton. What are you hoping that my listener will do in regards to this measure?
Well, we have to keep our foot on the gas, David. I mean, it doesn't seem to have a lot of support among the commission, but again, I want to make sure that we keep our foot on the gas, that we make sure that we have a good showing at this workshop tomorrow at 6 o'clock. And then the resolution may not even make it to the meeting agenda. It may not even be voted on. So if we can kill it before it even gets to the commission meeting, which is on the 19th, then we've had success.
I spoke with Harold Fisher, and hope to have him on the phone a little bit later today. He is a commission member, and they're one of 9, and he says that there's not support for this measure from one commissioner, Bill Holland. Well, Joe Page, thanks very much for chatting with my listener and me. Thank you very much.
David, thank you for the opportunity.
We're hearing from Joe Page in Rhea County. He's very concerned about the prospect of a measure that gives very broad powers to the county government to, effectively to harass people in matters that are perhaps beneath the threshold of being actual wrongs, and that would be when you have an actual wrong and want to act on that. Well, you have the court open to you. You have chancery court in that county and also circuit court, and people who have a grievance, they have to always assess how badly they're being hurt, and can they live with that, or can they find some way of abating the nuisance of the neighbor. And ordinarily, without regulation, these things are settled privately. They're settled privately, or they're settled in court. The courts are there to solve disputes, right? That, in fact, that's the whole local economy argument about the free market. The free market and the idea of constitutional government holds that the state is passive, right? The state is passive. It's there to solve a problem if you have one. It's there to enforce weights and measures, for example. It's there to provide courts where disputes are ended or compromises are reached. But it's not there to have a positive ethic, right? That's, of course, this is the biblical model that you hear about sometimes in church, in Christianity, where in the polity of Christianity, the state is passive. Its main job is to provide the court, the court is there, and it waits for people to come before it and ask for help. It doesn't go out and try to make things good ahead of time, and that's what regulations are all about. Regulations are in their design to prevent dispute, right? To prevent wrongs, to prevent things that are seen as scandalous and damaging to the public ethic and public morale. This is David Tulis. We're glad you're giving us a few minutes of your time here at 92.7 FM. We're live on Facebook and live on YouTube. On Facebook, it's the Nooga Radio channel, and I'm the man with the bow tie, said to be the smartest man with same in Chattanooga, leaving room for you, my listener, who doesn't wear bow ties. You can certainly be the smartest in your category. Live also on YouTube at Hot News Talk Radio. That's our company is Hot News Talk Radio, and we're the Sean Hannity station and the Alex Jones station, CBS. At 1 o'clock, do tune in to our very high-end program about the global market, the global economy, the politics and power and policy program at 1, and at 2, the markets program. There's a story I wanted to mention in the Chattanooga Times-Free Press. There's a very chirpy, cheersome version of it on TV3 this morning, WRCB TV. It's about Hamilton County Department of Education holding a recruitment event for teachers. And well, this story is very, very positive. It just glows with the idea of opportunity for inviting great teachers to find their hometown in the scenic city of Chattanooga, according to Aaron Harrell, who is the recruitment and field experience coordinator. Chattanooga is a great place to live and work and to play. But the story really is not that cheerful, let's just say. And that is because, for one, teaching in the public school is a really dismal calling in the factory education system. Here in the county, there are 43,000 students. And the story in the Times-Free Press by a new writer, Megan Mangum, is her name at the newspaper, has a much different view. And one suggesting that there is a good bit of desperation on the part of the professional classes, the leisure classes who run the school system. There are 16 vacancies, she says, in Hamilton County. There are going to be about 200 teachers, 190 teachers or so, meeting today in a hiring expo to hire people to work as a state thought delivery system managers and personnel. That's what teachers really are, to give the state's agenda and the state's perspective on all truth, all experiences. And so the story mentions that there is a great deal of burnout. There's worry about low compensation among people on the payroll, and there are fewer people going for the so-called education degree at UTC and at UT. The education degree is the Mickey Mouse degree, and from what I've read in the past, the lowest quality students at the university take those classes. They take those classes to get their degree. It is essentially a mind-numbing, soul-destroying load of coursework that you take, and in the end, you are a very compliant, unthinking, obedient, servile bureaucrat. Though you're a teacher, you think the parents think that you're all about ideas and the topics at hand, whether it's geography or civics. That is your real passion, but really all that has been drained out of you in the redundant coursework where there's a tiny kernel of truth that you can probably learn in 5 or 6 days of steady study and review, but it's stretched out over 2 years at the university, and so you're going to burn out, right? If your soul has to go through that and your intellect has to go through that. It's not just low compensation that's going to bring you out of the system. UTC School of Education graduated, according to Megan Mangum in the Times-Free Press, in 2014, 234 licensed teachers, as they're called, and then the next year, only 165. There's a collapse all around the country, the story suggests, and among teaching professionals who are going into the government cartel, the government classroom. Hamilton County has 649 employees who are teachers who are eligible for retirement and will be getting on the dole of the Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System, as almost all state employees do nowadays. It's a very sad story about the employment market of this class of people. This is David Tulis. Glad you give me a few minutes of your time here at Nooga Radio. Do stay tuned. I've got some important messages for you. Remember, our station prospers and survives when you patronize all of our wonderful sponsors here on the David Tulis Show and at Nooga Radio.
The Tennessee Valley's news.